I have to say, you're my first ever virtual press thing I've ever done.
Oh,
Just so
really? Oh, my
you're
goodness.
it for me, Jose. So make it memorable, okay? Make it good. All right.
What was it like just having all this time to anticipate from its debut at Sundance all the way till now? What has that wait been like to share this
You
film?
know, oh, that's such a good question. Like the wait has been productive. I guess that's the word that I'm going to say. It's been really productive. And we, and I know, of course, the film premiered and then, the world shut down as the world was wont to do at 2020. And so, but we were really afforded the opportunity to go in and fine tune a few things before we kind of, are coming out next week, so we're really excited by it, but the anticipation's been great. The story has been great. Working with Shauna has been wonderful, and Ella. So like I have no complaints, but that time waiting was really used productively.
This story is something that has so many like elements and nuances that touch on things that can be sensitive or triggering for audiences. So what made you trust this team?
What might be triggering for one person is the reality for another. Okay. So for me being, I know you can't tell, but I'm Black and a woman. What? Do you know what I mean? So there's things where I'm like, it's like, well, sorry that it's triggering for you. This is what we live with, pretty much every day. And I really appreciated, that Shauna and the team were ready to address this, not only just as a woman, but as a woman of color, right? Which is a whole different level. And I appreciated it. It was coming from a place of integrity. Shauna had her reasons of like, look, this is my what and why. It's just like that guy in Missouri who was kidnapping Black women and putting him in his basement. And nope, the police didn't believe. And they were like, hey, I think this guy Haskell. No one believed. No one believed until someone came out, until one person was able to escape. Right. So people don't realize that, like, they might think this is far fetched and whatever. And I'm like, this just happened 2 weeks ago. Right. Not a demon per se, hopefully, but he wasn't a good person. But that's a sort of thing where like I don't necessarily really sort of cotton to the idea of triggering or sensitive when this is the daily, what we live through on the daily basis. So I thought it was really important to talk about in this way.
It is fascinating just what kinds of themes you can explore through horror. What made that
Right.
genre kind of feel like the right vessel for this story?
Yeah, I think genre is a great way to sort of educate as you entertain, and people don't feel preached to, right? Genre like a thriller, sci-fi, action, horror, like it gets butts and seats and people are ready to sort of suspend belief, and then like halfway through they're like, wait a minute. This seems really, like seems like we just read it in the headlines the other day, but a little different. I think genre is a way to really build understanding and also build bridges through people that might not be a woman, might not be a person of color, but to actually sit in our shoes and be like, oh yeah, that is a bit of a micro, aggression or a macro aggression, or like, oh, that's not cool. Like this is what I love. And I love it when, and especially in horror, because you're already like anticipating waiting for something to happen, and you're a bit more open and you're ready for that ride. So I really love to be able to take people who are already like open, willing, ready to go on a fun ride, but also be able to be like, I'm going to slip some stuff in there that'll, like, when you're having dinner or having drinks with your friends afterwards, to be like, hey, what did you think about dot, dot, dot?
What's your own relationship with horror, really? Your own favorite horror movie?
Ooh, that's good. Like I'm a nerd, and I've been a nerd, or blurred, I should call it, for like a really long time. But I'm old enough where I remember Blackula. All right. So I'll go way back. And even before that, and this is where I lose people because I do have a love of Charlton Heston, the Omega Man that was made in 1971, right? That was like interracial. He was with Rosalind Cash, and it was interracial zombie vampires. And that was the first time I got to see Black people in a horror film, besides that wasn't like all Black, like Blackula or Abby, which was the sequel to Blackula. I told you that I was a nerd. So like I love the Omega Man, is probably one of my favorites, but it's sort of a hybrid of like a sci-fi slash horror.
What kinds of horror projects were the most influential to this?
You know, that's really interesting. I would probably want to reach out and ask that of Shauna. But to me, this movie felt a bit, and I don't want to say it might not be horror per se, but it felt a little bit like Gloria. Remember Gloria, the Cassavetes, if I'm not mistaken, where like she was like really a woman on the run, trying to make something happen and trying to figure out what's going on, trying to save her. Not, she wasn't a mother, but she had that little kid that she was trying to protect. That sort of felt like that to me, but also it had moments of Pulp Fiction. Like, this is me talking, and Shauna's the one who wrote it and directed it. But to me, there were certain elements where, remember, like Patricia Arquette and this is terrible, I'm blanking on his name. His character name was Tony Soprano. What is his name? Do you remember?
James Gandolfini.
Yes, James Gandolfini. Good job.
Yeah.
Okay. And Jay, remember like when James Gandolfini and Patricia Arquette, like in Pulp Fiction in a hotel room, and like that sort of relentless sort of beating that she got, but she kept fighting. And it was something so small, like something so small as like the corkscrew in the foot was the thing that, like, you know what I mean? That bought her enough time to save herself. Like there were elements like that. And a lot of the great movies that I like grew up and knowing and loving that I could sort of see an homage to. But I don't know if that was Shauna's original intention, because I feel that, you know, and when she'll speak about this herself, a lot of this came from personal experience, right? So a lot of this came from, you know, of needing help at a time and no one came to help her, and that she had to sort of help herself, which is what a lot of women these days, you know, we have to deal with. Like, no one's coming to save you. We have to save ourselves. And by this saying, the we being the royal we, being like, I think that women need to look out for each other and women of color need to look out for each other, because not a lot of there's not, you know what I mean, like not a lot of other folks are.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like that story that you mentioned about no one believing until they see someone coming out of that house.
Yeah, she's like, why does she have like a padlock, you know, on her neck, running away like from a basement? It's crazy, and to think about, you know, and even I'm sure people are talking. Now, I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but like Dahmer, right? But it's that same thing that keeps happening over and over again, where white men are of the dominant culture, you can call it. Like they're like, oh, nobody really like focuses on people of color, and certainly people don't focus on like women, you know, a lot. Look at what's happening with the indigenous community in Alaska, right? That the women are just like, what is going on? Like, it's just something that, like, because one, maybe we don't get the media attention, we're not necessarily believed all the time. And I think that movies like this can sort of amplify that conversation to be like, well, that's crazy. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But it's reflective of what's actually happening now. Like, I can't wait for something like this to be a total fiction and to be like, that would never happen. You know what I mean? Instead of like, hey, check the Missouri Star, because it just happened like 2 weeks ago.